as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a review, and I want to talk to you a little bit about these cigars here. They're called Bloodline, and it's at the very bottom of the band, it says Bloodline and then OPA or OPA, which stands for three very legendary growers in Nicaragua that can trace their roots all the way back to Cuba, which is why, again, they're using that really cool name of Bloodline. So to give you a little bit of history on that, the O stands for Oliva, the P is for Perez, and the A, Aganorsa. Any of you that smoke cigars should be somewhat familiar with those names because you'll find their tobacco in close to probably 60 to 70% of the cigars that you smoke. They're huge growers. Again, now they're in Nicaragua, tracing those roots back to Cuba. And what's happened with these cigars, it's a very neat thing. I'm going to give you, again, I gave you a little bit of history of the name, but I want to talk to you about the actual process of the tobacco that's being used in these very special cigars. So in the main line, you have the blonde, Bloodline, you have the Habano, and then you have the Maduro or the brunette, which is cool. And it's a very, very well thought out process of making the cigars, the tobacco, as well as the marketing behind it. I really love it. This was started by Micah Johnson. He is the owner of a very cool lounge, as I mentioned, in Fresno, as well as Clovis. So the name of the lounge is Cigars Limited, and I visited recently. It's a really cool spot. Great layout. So as soon as you walk in, you have a lot of room to find seating, different little areas for seating, lots of TVs, of course, to watch all the games. Great humidor. I was blown away by this guy's humidor. Amazing. He has a great selection and just very spacious. Aside from that, you have your locker area, and then you have a really neat patio outside. So lots of different options when you go to that lounge. Really cool. And as I mentioned, that humidor is just amazing. So getting back to the actual cigar, this was a line that Micah started. He's another one of those, I call him cigar nerds, very passionate about cigars, about the process, about the tobacco, and he's very knowledgeable. So I was really interested in learning a little bit about this cigar before I actually smoked them. So as I mentioned, that process that they're using is very different. It's called a soft crush. Now, what that means is during a regular fermentation, if you've ever been to a factory, the tobacco, once it's been cured, they make these pilones. So they form, these piles of the different tobacco leaf based on the primings and whatnot. And in this situation, during that first fermentation, they're actually using that soft crush process, which is fairly unique for cigars. What they do, according to Micah, I haven't seen it myself, but he was explaining it a little bit to me, is they put these bricks on the very top, which that actually helps to expel some of the heat and the oil from the tobacco. It speeds up that process a little bit, but it's also similar to olive oil and the process and what they do to the grapes, the olives, and what that does, and it adds this different type of flavor. So it's really unique. When I smoked these cigars, I've actually smoked all of them, and when I smoked them, it was totally something like very unique. It was a completely different experience than I was expecting. So the blonde, again, is using the lighter Connecticut wrapper, and it's a very unique profile. It's something that's still going to be on that lighter side, but it just has these really unexpected flavor tones. So if you're somebody that likes that lighter, more mild cigar, this is going to be the way to go for you to try out the blonde. It's a good morning cigar, as well as throughout the day, or if you're just somebody who likes that more mild cigar, this would be the way to go. Personally, I was torn between the two. I really enjoyed the Habano as well as the Maduro, and I smoked them on and off that night, both of them. I actually started backwards. I did the Maduro first, and then I went to the Habano. But today, for the purpose of the review, I'm going to do the Habano because it's kind of more middle of the road, and it's probably, from what I saw in that night in the humidor, it's kind of the more popular one. So the Habano it has a beautiful rosado Habano wrapper, and it has 75% ligero, which under any other circumstances, if you were to smoke a Habano cigar with 75% ligero, it would probably be way too much. It would probably like knock you on your behind. So, but in this case, because of that soft crush process, it just creates this really smooth, really unique, very nice flavor. So again, before I spoil it too much, I want to go ahead and just light it up and smoke it with you guys. So as I mentioned, very smooth. You don't get any kind of like kick. I mean, in a bad way. You don't get that like slap of spice that sometimes you get when there's a lot of that, again, a lot of the ligero, or even sometimes with that Habano leaf, you get a different type of thing. So this one, the aroma is incredible. And now that I'm smoking it here on my own again, I'm really getting those aroma notes, because at the lounge, of course, everybody's smoking, so you kind of get that mixture of aromas going on throughout. But now that I'm alone and I'm, getting a nice whiff of the aroma, it's incredible. It's very inviting. It has a nice toastiness to it, a little bit of a cedar type of an element, but the smoke itself it's smooth. It's like, it's hard to describe even, because I mentioned it's such a unique thing, but it's really, really smooth. So there's a hint, a very, very small amount of a cinnamon spice, almost like a cinnamon sugar, like you would imagine if you ever had the toast with a little bit of butter and the cinnamon sugar on it. It kind of has that element. It's kind of a weird way to describe it, but you get a little bit of that toasty, the bread, and you get that sweet underlying something. You also get a little bit of that floral, as I mentioned, but not your traditional floral. It's kind of like a little bit of jasmine, yeah, you get a little bit of the jasmine, and you get a little tiny bit of a mint. Real, real, real subtle. Don't mix that up too much with the toasty and the sweet. There's just a very, very subtle amount of a minty, kind of a peppermint in there. But again, it's very, very subtle, but really good. I mean, it completely surprised me. Again, just reading about the blend. Sometimes when you look at cigars and you kind of read what they have in it, you have a little bit of an idea of what they're going to taste like. But with this one, you just don't, because it's completely different than anything I've ever smoked. It just has a really unique presence about it. Again, just very, very smooth. I would never guess that it has that much ligero in it. It just doesn't even. And again, for those of you who aren't familiar with ligero, I'm talking about it a lot. It's one of the most top parts of the plant. It's the part that spends the most time, on the leaf, on the plant itself, out in the sun normally, and it's the thicker, it has the most nicotine in it, so it's a stronger leaf that's used, and usually it's just a little bit that people put in their cigars to give it that extra, little oomph. And in this case, it has so much of it, but you really can't tell. I mean, you just don't get that overwhelming strength from it. It's just really, really smooth.